And abiento, welcome. And welcome to the United Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. We are an inclusive, non-creedal fellowship that works for a just community and fosters a lifelong search for personal spiritual fulfillment. Here at UUCLC, we value making a difference in ourselves, our community, and even in the world. Good morning, I'm Kristen Mark Hughes, and I'm honored to be your service leader this morning. The Reverend Kristina Spaude will deliver our sermon entitled Between the Spaces. She shares the following as a description. We live in a highly divided world, one where we are separated by politics, fear, the news media, and many other ways. It's hard to remember to look for points of connection and common experience sometimes. What if in our interactions with others and ourselves, we focused on the relationship, thinking that it is in the relationship that the holy lives? Well, first we have some announcements. Be sure to check your weekly bulletin, your service bulletin, that was attached to your Sunday service email. There are many UU activities and groups meeting in the Zoom this week, and now is the time to make a difference by getting involved in some of our committees or groups. Many groups have been very active even during this pandemic, so I bet you can find one that will meet your needs and help to make us a better community as well. So if you're interested in receiving our weekly bulletin and you don't already have it, or you want to learn more about us, just send us an email to the following: office@lakecountyuu.net. That's lakecountyuu.net. Or leave your email in the chat so we can contact you. So here's our first announcement to get it started while you all scramble around and look at what you're going to make sure you shared with everybody this morning. The UUCLC Board of Trustees has announced a tentative building, get ready for it, a reopening date, September 5th. We may soon be with each other again live at Sunday services. Preparations and guidelines for the reopening, if we do it, may, as well as the date, may change according to COVID conditions in our area. The Safe Congregations Task Force, which we have an active one, and the board are keeping up with local statistics and the CDC recommendations, and we'll let you all know later in August exactly what to expect and when we get started. So, are there any more announcements? Looking around the room. Hello, anybody? All right, I'm looking and I don't, any hands up?
I don't see any.
Any cautious smiles in the room? Russ, nothing from you this morning? Okay.
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to open today with some words from, get ready for it, Soren Kierkegaard. So here it is. What I really need is to get clear about what I must do, not what I must know, except insofar as knowledge must precede every act. What matters is to find purpose, to see what it is that God wills that I should do. The crucial thing is to find a truth, which is truth for me, to find the idea for which I am willing to live or die. So with that, come, let us worship together. I welcome all of you this morning. If you're visiting for the first time, and I'm looking around the room and I see a lot of familiar faces. Good morning, everybody. If you're comfortable doing so, just wave your hand and we'll call on you. And you can unmute and introduce yourself and tell us what brought you here. And I'm looking around, are there any visitors? Christy, do you see anybody new besides Reverend Kristina?
I don't see anyone raising their hand.
All right. All right. I want to welcome Reverend Kristina Spaude. And am I saying your last name correctly? Could you say it for us so I get it right from here on out?
It's Spaude.
Howdy. Okay, just like it's spelled. Thank you. Welcome, Reverend Kristina Spaude. The Reverend Kristina is a native of Northeast Ohio. She grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland and then spent about 20 years in Kent, Ohio. Reverend Kristina comes to Florida by way of Pennsylvania, where she worked as a staff chaplain for the Geisinger Medical Center, which was a level 1 trauma and regional medical center in Danville. And prior to that, she completed her chaplaincy residency and fellowship at the Northeast Ohio VA Medical Center in Cleveland. Serving our nation's veterans continues to be important to her. Reverend Kristina also served as a part-time director of religious education with the Southwest Unitarian Universalist Church in North Royalton, Ohio, an intern and sabbatical minister for the First UU Church of Youngstown, Ohio, like little pinball in Ohio bouncing around. She's a graduate of Meadville Lombard Theological Seminary and is previously graduated from Kent State University with a very light load, majoring in history, French, and Russian translation. Spasiba. She's among Kristina's passions are intersectionality, and you'll have to look that one up just like I did, working to dismantle systems of oppression, sexuality education, community building, including time banking, theology, sciences, linguistics, history, and especially learning. One of her favorite current practices in her spare time is cross-stitching. Her happy place is being in water, and she loves to swim. And occasionally, when prompted, I suspect, she also runs. We really look forward to your message later, Kristina, and Reverend Kristina, and thank you very much for being here. So this morning, I'm very, very grateful to ask Christy Cleveland to do the chalice lighting for us.
We are a people of memory. As inheritors of our ancestors' legacy, we hold their stories tenderly, gleaning wisdom from diverse journeys, united in hope for the future. Guide us to trust in love as we kindle this flame together.
And please join us in singing Spirit of Life. Each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy, concern, or sorrow. This portion of our service will not be recorded. I welcome a reader. Reverend Kristina, back to you for a reading.
So my reading for today, this first one, is actually a story. And hopefully you will enjoy it. I think you will. Everyone has. It's a favorite of mine. And even when I lead worship in places where there are obviously no children, I don't care. I tell stories anyway because I think they're vital. So this is an edited down version of the story God in Between by Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso. Once there was a town at the foot of a hill with no roads and almost no windows. Without roads, there was nowhere to go. Whenever they tried to leave their homes, the people who lived in the town would sneeze through tall, tangled weeds, tumble into deep holes, and trip over rocks as large as watermelons. Without windows, they slept late into the day. They couldn't see in or out of their houses. The people got tired of sneezing, tumbling, and tripping, of seeing nothing and going nowhere. So they gathered at the center of town to decide what to do. Someone said, "I've heard there is a God, and when people find God, God solves their problems." "Let us find this God," another shouted, "and God will build windows and roads for us." Others thought this was ridiculous. People just pretend there is a God. If God were real, God would find us. Yet the people saw no other way to fix their town, so they decided to look for God. But they couldn't go anywhere with no roads. There were two houses, old houses at the edge of town, each with a single window. They called the man and woman who lived in those houses the ones who could see out windows. If they can see out windows, maybe they can see a way to God. So the people of the town sent them to search for God. They thought God must be on the other side of the hill. They made their way out of the town, and some people thought they'd never return. The woman who could see out windows went to a mountain. The climb was steep and the peak was cold. She gazed up at the sky. She looked down to the ground, but she did not see God. Then the woman thought that God might be in the deep waters. So she set sail on a ship that went far out into the ocean. A storm came and the ship tossed and turned on the heavy waves. She got sick. She decided to return to dry land. Meanwhile, the man who could see out windows traveled to the desert. He listened for God in the winds, looked in the sands, getting sunburned, blistered, but he did not find God. Then the man thought he might find God in a cave. He searched in the dark and listened in the silence. It was lonely and scary in the cave, and he did not find God. The man and woman were tired and decided to stop looking for God. Each hoped the other had been successful. But when they met, she saw his drooping shoulders, and he saw her sad eyes. Neither had found God. It was a dark, moonless night, and the ones who could see out windows could only see each other. In soft, small voices, they talked all night. In the morning, they agreed it was time to go home. The townspeople saw the man and woman returning, and they gathered to greet them. "Tell us, Where is God? The woman said, I climbed a tall mountain. I traveled on the waters, but I did not find God. The man said, I walked across the desert and sat alone in a cave, but I did not find God. The people shouted, we were right. There is no God. They got louder and louder. They were so busy complaining that they forgot about the ones who could see out windows and about God. Days passed and everything was the same in the town, except for one thing. The man and woman helped each other put windows in every room in their homes. Then they cut the weeds and filled the holes and cleared the rocks to build a road between their houses. The townspeople were stunned. We've never had any roads, and we've never seen so many windows. How did you do that? With God's help, they answered. But you told us you had gone to the mountains and the sea, to the desert and the cave, and there was no God. We journeyed hundreds of miles looking for God, and then we found each other, said the woman. And we discovered God was with us, added the man. With you? Right here? At home? Wherever we are, answered the woman. What about beyond the hill, in the mountains, the sea, the desert, the cave? Wherever we are, said the man. But I can't see God anywhere, someone insisted. I just see you. If God is here, show us where. The ones who could see out windows spoke in a whisper. The people gathered close to listen. God is in the between, they said, in between us.
Let us reaffirm who we are by reciting together our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It's our practice to give generously to our church as we are able, and keeping in mind both its meaning in our lives and its impact in the world, on the world. We're thankful to all of you who can provide financial support for UUCLC. And in order to continue our virtual services and to keep our beautiful building protected and ready for our eventual return, maybe next month. There are multiple ways that you can do this. You can click on the chat box right now. Thank you for your donation today. If you see on the slide, there are also other ways you can do it. Set up automatic payments. You can download the app, Give Plus, which I do personally. It works really well. Or you can just mail a check to Eustis, Florida, to the address above, P.O. Box 1761 Eustis. Thank you very much. Now, fill your heart with energy as the energy of our holy gathering, and enjoy this hymn. When our heart is in a holy place.
When our heart is in a holy see our faces in each other's eyes, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, yeah, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place, then our heart is in a holy place, then our heart is in a holy place.
Muting, unmuting, trying to read different pages. Uh-oh. Hang on.
Welcome back. It's all good.
Hi. Where did my service go? It disappeared. Give me just a second.
No problem. You may all have noticed that I threw Reverend Kristina off by missing our silent reflection this morning. It skipped right over the slide.
That's
So
okay.
this is actually the minute of calm and relaxation that everyone's supposed to experience right now. So we'll all just hang out while you get everything you need. Take your time.
Oh, there we go. Okay. One of the not perks of being on a computer is accidentally closing tabs. Okay. This reading is an excerpt from an interview with Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond. She says, "Many of us don't know that our love matters. We are a technological culture, so we think that we are supposed to be able to fix people's problems. Or we think that there is a right thing to say. People want us to be comforting, but they don't know how to do that. People want to be comforting, but they don't know how to do that. What I have discovered is that the simple human connection is what matters. Nobody expects you to fix their lymphoma or breast cancer, but people expect or hope that their suffering really matters to you. All that's needed is to say, 'I heard about your illness. I'm so sorry.' Just say it and really mean it. Say it from your heart. There is nothing more powerful." I remember one of the most profound things that ever happened to me when I was young, in the midst of my really severe suffering with my illness, was when this person came up to me and said, "You know, I heard that it's been really hard for you. I'm so sorry." Then their eyes filled with tears. I knew my life mattered. I knew that they cared about me. I felt strengthened to go on. They didn't fix a thing about me. They were just real. Some of us feel being real isn't enough. We think we are supposed to be an expert and have the right words and the right answer. We are the right answer. Everywhere, says the poem by Warsan Shire, a London-based Somali poet. The end of the poem, titled "What They Did Yesterday Afternoon," reads, "Later that night, I held an atlas on my lap, ran my fingers across the whole world, and whispered, 'Where does it hurt?' It answered, 'Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.'" From politics and politicians and the media, holy wow, the media dividing us, worsened by the pandemic, to the fear that seeps into everything, social media, our homes and schools and work, the fear. We live in fear. Even if we are not afraid ourselves, we are surrounded by it. Fear is a natural emotional response. Its job is to keep us safe, but it can be abused too. And this recent past presidential administration and living in Florida, people unwilling to get vaccinated when they're able to protect the rest of us, assault on the environment and refusal to care for people impacted. What happens to Black and brown and female and LGBTQIA+ and immigrant and indigenous and disabled people, and the news from all over the world. Civil wars, terrorism, refugee crises, abuses, assaults, climate volatility and crisis, pandemic spread and death. So many things to be fearful of and for. So many things used to make us fearful, and we are. And some of us are afraid of or for the people who are afraid. The pandemic has amped this up for all of us. It's overwhelming and exhausting. Living in this world is hard, and it hurts everywhere. What can we do? If there was a simple fix that could just make it all better, I hope it would have been applied by now. Maybe we are waiting for someone else to figure it out because it seems too big for us to do alone. Then there are wildly different opinions about how we've gotten to where we are, and they all know a part of the truth. It can be easy to forget that we know a truth, not the truth. We other each other. We name call and point fingers and antagonize and objectify and act out of our fears. And we might acknowledge that in that place, we may not be our best selves. I actually think just noticing that we may not be our best selves is movement in the right direction. When we notice others' humanity and our own, that one's important and we sometimes forget it. When we notice our humanity, we might pause. It's not about who's right or wrong or how right or how wrong they are. That isn't a foundation for building relationships. It doesn't bring us nearer each other, but keeps us pushing away. It disconnects rather than connecting us. There's friction, differences. But one truth about human beings is that we are social creatures, wired for connection, and it is relationships that are the foundations that sustain us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We need each other. It can be hard to set our own passions and frustrations and excitement or assuredness that we are right or whatever else aside. A practice that can be helpful is to first notice that we are having a response. Especially when we are having an emotional response, we often stop listening to other people. Sometimes I notice that I'm having a conversation with someone, either online or in real life, and I can tell that at best, one of us is listening to what the other has to say. This happens to all of us. I witness it every day. Each person is stuck on their side of the conversation and unable or unwilling to make space for the other side or another possibility. This is talking at or to instead of talking with, and may feel like having two separate conversations because that's what's happening. People are talking past each other instead of with each other. Instead of being in relationship, they are trying to be heard. And yet, it is in the differences that we find the possibilities and opportunities to build bridges between us, if we choose to see it that way. That is our work and our wonder. Let's talk about a concept called flipping the script. Non-complementarity is the technical term. So complementarity is typical behavior when we mirror and reflect each other. For example, if I am smiling and warm to you, you are more likely, much more likely, they say, to smile and be warm back to me. But if I give you the side eye, seem curt or cold, you are more likely to have a similarly unwelcoming response to me, much more likely. Sitting face to face and having a conversation, and each person leans forward, physically leaning in. That's complementarity. Non-complementarity, then, is when we do the opposite of this. Someone shouts at you in anger and you remain calm, for example. There was a podcast I listened to from Invisibilia where a situation was recreated. A gunman appeared and held up an outdoor dinner party, a celebration of a group of close friends for good news. At first, the evening partiers tried to make the gunman feel guilty and ashamed. That is complementarity, trading negative for negative, matching, and even trying to outdo the other. In that case, and as is often the case, this escalated the situation quickly. After some very tense moments, one of the partiers flipped the script, offered the gunman a glass of wine, and invited him to join the party. That's non-complementarity, which actually diffused the situation, flipping the script of what could have happened, what was even in the process of happening. The gunman does join in the story, a true story. He drinks some wine and has some cheese and compliments how good they are. He notes that he thought that he had come to the wrong party. A little later, he asks if he can get a hug, and then a group hug. He apologizes and leaves. Now, in the podcast, they continue exploring this concept using a psychological lens. It's really interesting, and I definitely recommend it. The episode is Flip the Script from July of 2016. And what really struck me is something that isn't addressed at all. It affirms that more than anything, what each of us wants and needs is to know that we are seen and heard and cared for. Even if just for a brief period of time. by someone else, that the other is ours. This can be as deep as listening to each other's stories, knowing another person on a deep heart level, like in the story. Or it can be much smaller and simpler, all the way down to something like holding a door for someone and perhaps looking them in the eye. Because for that brief moment, people know they are acknowledged and someone cared enough about their presence to hold the door. That someone else acknowledged they exist, and in that acknowledgement offered them a kindness. This is a spiritual practice, and in the time of that relationship, from the blink of an eye to months and years of devotion, this is a spiritual gift. It is in the relationship that the holy lives and dwells. Leaning in is a phrase that became popular a while back in a different context, but I think that that idea of leaning in offers us much in our relationships too, whether physically or metaphorically leaning in. Not because it solves or fixes anything, it won't necessarily, and that's not the point, but because it attends to and prioritizes the relationship. Anything we do with intention and care is sacred, holy. It is in the space between us where God lives, where God is. Treating our relationships as though they are where the transcendent lives, that is where the sacred dwells, can transform our interactions and our relationships. When we lean into each other, wanting to know more, letting down our defenses, wondering about the person we're with, that's when things begin to change. So we notice ourselves having an emotional response. We pause and breathe, and then we lean in. In the podcast, they say that flipping the script, that non-complementarity, is something very, very hard to do. I wasn't sure I agreed until I started thinking about our natural preference for comfort and familiarity, and leaning in and listening to another person, especially someone we already perceive from us in sometimes significant ways as being different. It may be a risk. It may seem uncomfortable. We may not agree with everything someone says. We may get offended. I'm still not entirely sure that this is something that is very, very hard to do, but I do acknowledge that it is against our natural inclination for maintaining the status quo. The other part of this is, though, that when we listen and trust and believe that what another person is saying is true, maybe their truth, but still true, and maybe that's a way to keep present, knowing that this is another person's truth. When we listen, we are affirming their person, their identities, their beliefs, and most especially their need to be known. And when we do this, we are also affirmed. We grow and we invite the sacred in with our intention to be in relationship, leaning into that intention when we seek to know each other. In our faith, we sometimes talk about prophetic witness. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, one of my favorite contemporary UU theologians, says, "Behind the lone prophet who speaks up, there is a group. It is always a mistake to imagine that lone prophets are really alone. We should think of Jesus that way, for example. It is a mistake to see him as an isolated, heroic individual. It is better to see him as the crest of a wave, the sparkling foam breaking brightly from the force of a whole ocean moving and swelling up from underneath. Prophetic witness is incredibly important now as much as ever. It's a part of my work, and I believe it's work that we are called to from a particular place as Unitarian Universalists, celebrating the wholeness and the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice as we do. What we need in these times is not only prophetic witness, though. We are also called to what I refer to as prophetic witness. We need each other. We need to learn how to be together and to lean in and listen to each other if we want the world to heal. Parker says, behind the lone prophet who speaks up, there is a group. We are part of that group. And the way we do our part is by being with, talking with, sharing with, breaking bread with. I'm not saying that we need to accept intolerance, hatred, bigotry, violence, fascism, or anything else. And I certainly hope that we don't. But we have become so divided and so focused on needing to, we might say, protect ourselves from behind these walls that we have created and are fed into from so many places that we struggle to practice witness. And what the world needs now more than anything is witness. This is the hardest work we will do, and we must find a way. We must draw the circle wide. Witness is what we Unitarian Universalists, bound by our shared covenants, are called to by who we are. Krista Tippett of the On Being podcast says, prophets help us connect the dots between the world as it is and the world as it might be. For people who believe that revelation is not sealed, we might understand that that space between the dots is sacred space, the space where we are with, where God, whatever your understanding of that may be, where God is with us, where the sacred dwells, where we are with each other. We need to be the people we're hoping to lead us. And we need to practice witness in those in-between spaces, connecting the dots with everyone as best we can, because we can't be the people we want to be with only some people. May we claim our heretical religious heritage, calling for love, justice, and mercy in this life. This is how we will bring some healing to the world everywhere.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
Our closing words today come from Jean Harrison Newyar. In The Gift of Faith, she has written, in the lore of ancient China, there's a story of a philosopher who was asked, where is the road called hope? He replied, it does not exist, but as people move forward upon it, it comes into being. I invite you to continue moving forward, journeying on this ever widening path called hope with me.
We're now going to invite Christy Cleveland. Go ahead, Christy.
Our chalice extinguishing words are by Deborah Burrell. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond. Come on, folks, let's lean into withness and draw the circle wide.
Thank you.
I can get there.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle